Howdy, folks. Happy Monday. We are back. We have a lot of things to discuss. Some of the races in the Eastern and Western Conference are starting to sort of filter out. It's nothing is over. We still have a little over 4 weeks left to go in the regular season, 15, 16 games. A lot of things can change. But we'll talk about that in a few minutes, but we'll start with the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
All right. So first thing I just saw was the Yankees have contacted the Mets about Steven Matz because they're looking for pitching. Here's the only problem. Matz is still the only lefty starter the Mets have, so I don't know why they would trade their only lefty starter since there's nobody else that would be a lefty starter that they have. Let's start with that.
Okay. Well, based on Matz's injury history, I mean, it's basically like, okay, he'll be healthy for the first 6 weeks until Paxton comes back, and then he'll probably be on the 60-day DL. So, he has had, he was one of the best young arms in baseball 3 or 4 years ago, but he's just been injured every year, and I don't know what kind of value the Mets, put him at. If they still think he's a top 5 starter, he can stay durable, then they're not going to trade him, especially to the Yankees. If they think he's going to break down, then that might be something that if they get a decent enough return, they do. But I mean, I'm sure that the Yankees have other fish to fry in terms of other pitchers, but
I don't think they think that he's going to break down. I mean, he threw 160 innings last year and had 11 wins. I mean, that's a really good year for Steven Matz. I mean, that's more than you could hope for most fifth starters. And the year before, he threw 154, so he hasn't broken down the last 2 years. He's been fine.
What this tells you, though, is they're not 100% remember, Jordan Montgomery's coming back from Tommy John surgery.
Yeah.
They have guys like Sessa and Loaizaga and a rookie named Debbie Garcia, who's really highly regarded. What they're saying is they want insurance because definitely.
But I do want to point out, Matt's had 30 starts last year. He had 30 starts the year before. So he hasn't had those injuries. So they would be looking probably for more than the Yankees would want to give anyhow. I mean, that's really my feeling. People think that this could happen simply because they have Porcello and Waka now. But Waka is really that's throwing a Hail Mary. And Porcello right now doesn't have a role in this pitching staff. We have to see what he even is anymore because last year he was legit awful. I watched him work out the other day. Yeah. He looks like he might have lost some weight. So maybe, that's something. I don't know.
Well, I mean, let's just say this. I don't think they're going to get Miguel Andujar for Steven Matz. If that's what they're looking for, if they're looking for somebody like that, then I don't think it's going to happen. But it's weird. It's like I look at baseball right now, and we're in the midst of spring training, and I'm focused on the Yankees because I'm a Yankees fan. But it just seems that, I mean, the only story that people are talking about is the Astros. And I can understand that because that was the biggest story of the offseason. And I think it's going to continue to be a story throughout the season. But it seems to it sucks the air out of the room.
No. There was a great story the other day. The Met game that I was at, Tim Tebow tripped over his own feet in the outfield. If people didn't go see it, go look at it. That was the one day that SNY was covering the game. So Keith Hernandez was there. I took a picture with him, but that made major news because this was just a routine fly ball late in the game when the Mets had like a 3-run lead or 2-run lead, and Matt's actually almost lost. Not Matt's, sorry, Tebow almost lost the game for them, literally tripping over his own feet, and then had to look at his shoe to try and act as if it was his shoelace that did it. I mean, again, look, he's a nice guy. He took pictures with people before the game. He is a great guy. Yeah. This is a hobby for him, and he's not a ball player. But that made big news, Mike. I mean,
can we call that the sequel to Angels in the Outfield?
Yeah. It just it was bad. I will tell people though that the Mets Stadium does have some nice renovations now, and they have 3 fields there now, Mike. So that's the plan is as these teams start to get dwindled down, that's what's going to happen is teams, clubs that have their own minor league situation, built new fields so they could put everybody there.
And they can play against each other.
But this is where Major League Baseball is saying, well, the stadiums aren't good enough and the conditions aren't good enough. No. This is really putting more money in the same owners' pockets by playing at their big complex for spring training. And to me, that's the big untold story here. And that's what I was noticing when I was down there. So all in all, though, it's fun. It was fun in my first spring training.
That was the first time you ever went?
First time I ever went. First time I ever went to Gatorland. Certainly won't be the last. That was one of the great places on earth.
I saw some of the
Nobody
pictures.
asked the peanut gallery. Thank you.
I saw some of the pictures. I'm like, no.
Oh, it was great. We got to feed the gators, Mike. I mean, you wouldn't.
Chunks of human flesh?
It wasn't human flesh. And it was great. I mean, I got to pet that alligator. I was rubbing his belly. His eyes were closing.
And they snapped a picture as your right hand was being chewed off?
Well, I will tell you this. There was a strategy. I took that picture before the feeding that we went to. So this way, if I did lose a hand or a finger, then at least that was my last good picture that you could show both arms.
Okay.
You got to fill for a minute.
Oh, okay. Let's see if there are any questions in the chat while I fill here for a second. Dean says Keith Hernandez is the most well-known Mets player because of Seinfeld. I don't think for non-baseball fans that might be true, but the guy won an MVP and won a World Series.
He's a great player, but people love Keith for being Keith too.
He's a borderline Hall of Famer. I think
there's a picture up on the wall at the ballpark of Pete Alonso, and then they superimposed Keith Hernandez next to it. Mm-hmm. So the photographer that was shooting Keith for that day, probably for shots for the opening of the season, asked Keith to stand next to Pete Alonso, and Keith is like, "Yeah, this is doing wonders for me, for myself." Just he was like, "Yeah, this is great. This makes me feel great." It was really funny, and even I could tell Keith was just like, "Why? Why are you having me take a picture next to Pete Alonso in a picture that you put me in that I wasn't in?"
Yeah, a former great first baseman with a future great first baseman, or maybe already a great first baseman in the line.
Yeah, it was, but yeah, he did snark about that. The other thing is, with the Olympics coming, we are now going to see a big farce of baseball. The Olympics is supposed to be the greatest athletes on earth. And for baseball, it's not going to be. You're going to have like Tim Tebow playing for the Dominican. You're going to have, he's playing for somewhere. I'll look it up. You're going to have Joey.
If he's playing for the Vatican, I can understand, but
Joey Batista is going to try and pitch.
Oh, God.
So Joey Bats is going to try and pitch for like the Dominican team.
Yeah, but can he toss his glove like he tossed the bat?
I don't know, but it's just like now it's just Tebow's playing for the Philippines.
Jesus Christ!
Because he was born there, right?
Oh, okay,
right,
okay, sure.
And Joey Bats will try and pitch for the Dominican.
Now coming in for Cuba, Raul Castro.
Yeah, so we're going to see just all kinds of craziness, and they're having the trials in like the next 2 weeks. Some real players are going to go, and then you're going to get a lot of these fake players, which is just, come on, man. This is not what the Olympics is supposed to be about.
Yeah, well, let's start the show. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Monday, March 2nd, 2020.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Lagello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Okay, let's start with the coronavirus update, because it's now affecting, and I'm not being sarcastic here. It is potentially going to affect. It could affect NHL games down the line.
3,000 people are dead around the world. Like, right, a lot of people.
And Russ mentioned the Olympics in Tokyo. I mean, we've had schools in Japan shut down for a month. They don't do that with like no forethought about what's going on right now. It's spreading in Italy and in Switzerland, where I think it's the highest level per capita of any country other than China. And the IIHF reported the cancellation of some of the world championships, not the main men's world championship, but some of the lower. I think they canceled the under 18s, Russ.
Yeah.
The report was, and Renee Fassel came out and said, they're prepared if worst comes to worst to play some of these games without fans in the crowd if they have to. But it's getting to the point now where, we know the considerations that, people who are in the United States or around the world, it's the same in terms of, prevention. I know a lot of people are wearing masks. I know, people are being told to, wash your hands.
Well, the washing of the hands is real. The 20 seconds of hand washing is real. The masks really don't work.
No,
they don't.
No, and I have a friend who's teaching in Shanghai, China, and he said that basically masks it's like you'd have to get a mask on the black market. They're sold out. The supply of masks around the world is dwindling, and like you said, I mean, if there are masks that form fit over your face, and there are the ones that are like the surgical masks, like Hawkeye Pierce wore in MASH. Those don't do anything. The only thing they prevent is if you're coughing, you're not spreading it.
Use more hand sanitizer, right? You do the vampire thing when you cough. But the other thing is take probiotics. That actually helps your body fend off things, and that's you could try and build up your body to help ward off something like this. That's your best bet. But it is going to affect sports. There's more things that are coming that are going to get canceled. Soccer is getting canceled. So we'll see. I mean, I think this may take the NHL out of the Olympics completely because if nothing – I mean, I know they've just found a cure.
It's 2 years away, but –
No, but they just found a cure, but now it has to go through trials, right? So how long will that take?
Months, easily months. So yeah, no, and I know that other things that are not sports related, like China produces the majority of generic and over the counter medication, like acetaminophen, Tylenol, or like the diabetic meds that I take. And like today I went to go get my monthly meds, and they said, well, you have to come back tomorrow because we haven't been resupplied yet. So it's like it can affect a lot of things. And in terms of hockey, I mean, right now they're going in stages. I wouldn't be surprised if, they've canceled certain levels of the World Championship, if they cancel the main one.
If there were a team in Seattle this year, they probably would have had to change a few games because they've already had deaths. There's actually 6 more cases out there. If it gets a little worse, you would think at some point they wouldn't have games there for a while, and they would just reroute those games. Yeah. They probably will do that in the OHL and the NHL. Luckily, they don't have a team there yet, but if they did, they'd probably have to start thinking about that.
Yeah. All right, let's get to the games on the ice. Now, over the weekend, and I'll start with the race for third place in the Atlantic. Toronto went in. Our last show was on Thursday. They were playing in Florida on Thursday night without Muzzin, with a shorthanded defense, and they won 4-3 in Florida. A big victory for the Leafs, especially coming off the David Ayres disaster last Saturday. Which, by the way, drink a shot for every time Hockey Night in Canada said the name David Ayres. It was like
I just passed around a video because of the new marketing between Green Day and the NHL. My favorite song off their new album is called Graffitia. It's sort of like one of their anthem-y kind of songs, and they do a good job with those. Mm-hmm. And that is front and center in that video. I
see. Yeah. So,
and I think it's great. I know you get mad because it's 2 lost points in the standings.
No, it's not that.
It still was a great moment, though.
It's not that, and I'm not saying it wasn't a great moment, but I really get the feeling that to use it back to back against the whole Scott Foster thing that happened in Chicago, that was a 2-day story, and then it disappeared. He made a couple nice saves in the third period. He was the emergency goalie. He did it for Chicago at home. This, I think it got more legs because it was a Leafs employee playing for the other team, and it was against Toronto. And that's why he was on like every show, like the Today Show. And
that's only a part of it. The other part is he was 42 years old. He set a record for the NHL because he was the oldest goalie to do that.
Right.
So there's that function too. So I think it's all of it, which then created all this discussion down in Florida. They're in Boca. I just left Florida. The GMs are down there now.
And by the way, they made a decision. They're sticking with
which is the right decision. This is the right way to do it.
But I have a feeling though that teams, let's just say this. I think teams are going to start to hire their own. They're not going to think so. Well, they're not going to depend. They're not going to depend on like the home team to provide an emergency goaltender.
Okay, let's just go through the scenario just quickly.
Okay.
So let's say Kyle Dubas is listening to this and actually thinks what you're saying is good. Mm-hmm. So they fire David Ayres. Do you know what kind of bad press?
No. They won't fire David Ayres.
No, he'll be the driver for the Zamboni, but he'll never be a backup goalie again.
David Ayres will be the emergency backup for Toronto.
Yeah, they won't do that.
We'll see. Okay, but anyway, let's get off that story. But so the Leafs.
Why do we have to get off that story so quick? It's a good story. You keep wanting to.
You're trolling here. It's typical. So the Leafs beat Florida on Thursday 4-3. This weekend, we have to talk about the collapse of the Florida Panthers because they lose in a shootout to Chicago, and they were lucky to get a point. They lose in a shootout 3-2 to Chicago. They tied up the game with less than 2 minutes left to go in regulation, and then lose with Taves and Kane scoring on Bobrovsky. And then surprisingly, they play Sam Mountainblanc as in the second of back-to-back games against Calgary. And you would think, and I said this to you before, you would think that they would play the more veteran of the two goalies against the team that was better. Some people think it's counterintuitive. Mm-hmm. Get the 2 points against the weaker team and roll the dice against the team that is perceived as being stronger. Calgary being a playoff team and Chicago not being a playoff team. I have a weird feeling it had to do more with Quenneville playing against his old team, but who knows? But they get a point out of that game. They lose a valuable point to Chicago, and then they don't show up against Calgary, lose 3-0, and the Leafs beat Vancouver, and now the Leafs are 5 points and even in games. It's not insurmountable, but I think the thing that has to be concerning is Florida went 3-2 on the West Coast, came back, and now have lost. I think they lost to Toronto, they lost to Chicago, and they've lost to Calgary. They've gone 0-2-1 in the 3 games of a 5-game homestand. That's they can't. That's fatal.
Well, the whole Bob contract and season seems fatal. So we'll start there, and it doesn't mean he can't come back next year and have a Vezina type year, but unless he starts going with like a 10-game winning streak soon, they're in deep trouble. Like they're really, really, really going to have a problem. So that's where you look at it and say, oh, I don't know. I worry about him. I do. And I think Quenneville, because of the way he is with goaltenders, sort of just didn't do the right thing here. And you know what? He's just going to call it as he sees it. And their defense isn't that good. They didn't do enough at the deadline. There's so many issues with the Florida Panthers.
I think they got worse. I think they got worse at the deadline. They gave up their number 2 center. I know that Trocheck has not played well the last 2 years. Maybe it's injury related. Maybe they think, okay, this is he is what he is now, and we can't. We're spending less than $5 million on a guy who scored 10 goals last year and 10 goals this year. But honestly, they got Haula and Walmark. Prisky might turn out to be a good pickup in a couple years, but right now he's not helping them. And I think they weakened themselves up the middle. And now, I it's tough for me to imagine them catching Toronto unless Toronto completely goes in the tank, which is completely possible because they're probably not getting back their defenseman for another couple weeks, even though they're practicing today in San Jose. I don't foresee Riley or Cece or Muzzin coming back. Maybe Muzzin didn't skate, but Riley and Cece did. So I don't know whether they're coming back in the next week or so. I think it's probably a couple weeks. But I mean, Florida just seems to be aimless right now. And Bobrovsky right now, he's played 50 games. He's 23, 19, and 6. That's under 500 if you put together the OT losses and the regular losses. 900 save percentage and a 3.23 goals against. Now, that's not all on him because he's playing in front of a defense that's probably as bad as Toronto's has been this year.
Yeah.
But they paid him $10 million to win some of those games.
He has to win some of those games like that. I mean, it's just if he doesn't win some of those games, not only do they not make the playoffs, they have to start worrying down the line. What do we do here? This is why I said I don't think Dale Talon's job is completely safe. I don't.
Yeah. Now, in the Atlantic Division, the Bruins at this point have withstood that hard charge from Tampa Bay. And again, we got a month left before the end of the regular season, but the Bruins have a 7-point lead on Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
Tampa Bay loses Stamkos, who is having core muscle surgery. He injured it again. It was a lingering injury that he was trying to play through. He re-injured it or aggravated it against the Leafs last Tuesday. Now he's having surgery this week, I think in St. Louis. I think that was what Elliot Friedman reported. And he will be out 6 to 8 weeks. Now, if you calculate that out to the remaining schedule, that he could come back probably late in the first round or early in the second round. I'm not saying that that's determinative because they're a deep team. They're a really good team. But losing one of your big guns hurts.
Everybody's losing big guns, but Stamkos is big. I mean, no matter how you look at how talented that team is, Stamkos is a big part of their engine. He's big in the locker room. He settles guys down. He's a leader. So that is going to be a big loss. I do think they could overcome it. I do think they have enough still. I mean, Vasilevsky on his own. I mean, you can't have a goalie stand on his head and get you to the Stanley Cup, but it certainly doesn't hurt.
Right.
And he can do that. And so I think they have enough guys that they'll get him back. It is a core injury, right?
Core muscle surgery, yeah.
So they'll get him back. Like that's one where players do know how to bounce back from. And so I don't have any qualms about him coming back maybe second round of the playoffs. I think they'll get out of the first round. But I think they might struggle. They might. Yeah.
I mean, right now, and again, this can change because 5 or 7 points is a good gap, but it's not an insurmountable gap. Right now, it would be Toronto, Tampa Bay. And I think Toronto would have a better chance, a puncher's chance, if their defense comes back, if Anderson plays well against Tampa without Stamkos. But I think Tampa Bay would be favored and a significant favorite. But I think the Leafs have a better chance against them than they do against the Bruins. Psychologically, the Leafs are done when they play Boston, and Boston plays that style that they just can't match up with. So I think the Leafs
it's such a weird game. Like it's just we all say this, and I know that history has been telling us that, but you never know where a team's going to gain confidence from, and you don't know like the last 5 games. Like what if the Leafs win the last 5 games and they gain confidence from that? Like it's just
I know, but there's just something with the Bruins. They've had their butt handed to them twice in 3. They will beat Boston once. I think that was in October. They beat them 4-3, but they lost one-sided games in Boston. I mean, one of them, Michael Hutchinson started, but I'm just
saying. There's always a moment where, like, when teams have these lopsided things where the tide turns, and you never know where that moment's going to be. So you don't know. But good example too. If we switch to like Philly, right? Like, now
that's where I was going to go.
Okay. So now websites are posting, well, they have the best odds to win the Stanley Cup. It's like, hold on. There's 17 games left. They're on another big hot streak. Hey, they're a good team. I said they would get 100 points and they would be a bubble team to make the playoffs. They look like they're going to make it today. They could still lose 10 in a row and then we'd all be worried, right? But right now, I think they are going to make it. I also think you can't put too much into beating the Rangers back to back because without Kreider and Shesterkin, who Shesterkin was the hottest goalie in the league,
right?
That made it a little bit easier. I mean, if you want to look at it from the Flyer side, if you took out Carter Hart and I don't know Kevin Hayes or Claude Giroux, and they had Kreider and Shesterkin, that would have evened out the series for them too. So that's a tough series, but it was a big wins for the Flyers because this time of the year you got to win those games, you got to bank those points. They did that, but still, you're going into Washington Wednesday. I mean, again, you don't know how that game's going to go. Right now, what we've learned is the last 5 to 7 games are really the ones that sort of count as how you're going to play towards the playoffs. We got a long way to go here. I know it feels like the finish line's there, but it's not.
Well, I mean, right now in the Metro, you have Washington at 86, Philadelphia at 83. Both have played 65 games. Pittsburgh has played terribly since the deadline. They're on the West Coast. They lost to L.A.
But LA's been beating some other teams too. We have to be fair.
But they lost to San Jose. I mean, they just have not played well.
No.
They're at 80 with a game in hand. Then the Islanders at 78 with 64 games, same as the Pittsburgh. Columbus holding on by their fingernails at 78 with 67 games played. And then you have the Carolina at 75 and the Rangers at 74. And I have to say, I was enthused with the Rangers, the way they were playing. And then they lose Shesterkin with the car accident, and then now they lose Kreider in the first period of the first game against Philadelphia. And now, did Lundqvist play in that second game?
He did, and so I started watching some of it today because I just got back from Florida, as you know. And I'll tell you, it's so hard. I mean, really hard for a goalie not to play for a month, just about a month, and then to throw him in there when he's used to playing all the time. Lundqvist is not used to being a backup goalie, or right now he's being treated like a lesser than that. He's not used to that. And I saw that the game was up 1-0. He still was making some good saves. He was making some really good saves. But again, the rust does creep in. Mm-hmm. These guys have to be playing all the time. These guys, that is how you stay sharp. It doesn't matter how old you are. And again, this was just going to be a bad idea from the way that the Rangers have handled it. All I was going to say is they really, when they had the 3 goalies, should have split it up a little more. But the problem is, like most hockey organizations, when Shesterkin got hot, they went with the hot hand, but now went to the detriment of Lundqvist.
Yeah. Okay. My side career is to criticize the Buffalo Sabres, and they've given me enough material, so I have to do it. I said leading up to the deadline, a month leading up to the trade deadline, that Jason Botterill, it was incumbent upon him to be able to sell, to get as much as he could for as many of the unrestricted free agents that he had. Now, we don't know what the dynamic is in terms of what ownership told him, in terms of your job is on the line if you don't make the playoffs, or at least you don't have consequential games in March. They were 6 points behind Toronto for third place in the Atlantic last Monday. It's 7 days later. They are 12 points out. They've lost, I think, 3 games in a row. They lost to Arizona. They've been on this they lost to Colorado. They're on a Western time zone road swing. I don't know what Botterill is thinking. If he's thinking self-preservation, then the reshuffling of the deck chairs by trading Rodriguez and Sherry for Cahoon, and then trading for Wayne Simmons. Okay, I get it, but you didn't do your team any favors, and they're nowhere appreciably better now than they were before the deadline, and they are out of it. There is no way in God's green earth the Buffalo Sabres are coming back from 12 points to, they're 10 points behind the wild card and 12 points behind, or actually they're 12 points behind both. So If
They're not coming back.
Yeah, they're not coming back, and I don't get it. And if he was basically told you've got to do something to keep your job, and this is then I put the criticism on Terry Pegula. You've got to read the landscape of where your team is and how good your team is, which is not very good. And you've wasted a great year of a great young player in Jack Eichel. And how many years will it be before Jack Eichel goes to Terry Pegula and says, "Get me the bleep out of here"?
Yeah, it's coming.
That's coming.
It's coming, and this was a bad move, but like if you really wanted Wayne Simmons in your locker room, then you should have signed him next year. You shouldn't have given up assets for him. Yeah, I guess it seemed like the edict was to play meaningful games in March. It's not going to happen. It was never going to happen. That's where this team is. So right now, all they should do is call up as many players as they can from Rochester, sit some of the underperforming ones from the NHL, and try and think about what they have going into next year, because that's it. I mean, at least they moved Bogosian out. That was smart. Do a little more of that, but let some of these young kids finish out the season, because otherwise you're only going to be able to marginally fix this team next year. Yeah. You're not going to be able to make big sweeping changes. You're not going to have the cap space for that. You'll have cap space, but there aren't going to be great players out there either. That's the other problem.
They're going to have over 25. I think that's like close to 25 million in cap space. But the problem is getting players to come to Buffalo.
Yeah, that's what kept in my head after was like, there's not the players, even if you have it.
Right, and you will have to overpay in free agency to be able to get them. You know, the only other thing you can do is trade for players who have existing contracts. You know, you can take on those players and probably get them for less if other teams want to move those players, but you're still having to give up something, and they really don't have the depth of talent. I mean, unless they want to trade young guys like Casey Middlestat, who you know, you don't know what he's not a fully formed player yet, and you could get burned a couple years down the line by trading a guy like that and then finding out he's a good player and you gave him up when he was 21. That's stupid. But you know, that's the thing. That's the only way. I mean, are they going to overpay Sam Reinhart? Are they going to sign Dahlin after 2 years, which probably they'd want to do, but it's probably going to cost them about $8 million a year, like Thomas Chabot did? I mean, all these questions. And are you going to let Botterill do that when Botterill has been on the job for 3 years and they're anywhere close to being better than they were 3 years ago?
I'll be honest, I have no idea which way they're going, and I don't even know if they know right now.
That's the best thing you said. Yeah, exactly. Now, shifting to the West, the top three in the Central seem to be locked. It's just a question of what order it is. St. Louis is 88 points, topping the division. Colorado is 2 games in hand. They're at 85. But they have the significant injury still. Rantanen is out. Kadri is out. So they have a plus 49, which is unbelievable. And Grubauer is still out, but Francouz has done a fairly decent job filling in for him. Dallas is at 81. The gap between Dallas and Nashville, which is the next highest team in the Central, is 9 points. So I think that Nashville and Winnipeg are relegated to fighting for wild card spots, and it's going to be those top 3. It's just a question of what order those top 3 will be.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think ultimately, but again, there's still 17 games left. I got to look at it. I don't know if I'm totally married to that idea. I don't know.
Well, I mean, Nashville's got 2 games in hand on St. Louis. They're even with Colorado. They got 1 game in hand on Dallas. 9 points is a pretty significant gap. And I think right now Nashville would be happy if you would guarantee them a wild card spot. I think they'd be happy. But obviously, if they make a charge, you know, they would have the opportunity to get up in that top 3. But right now, I think they're focusing on getting one of the 2 wild card spots.
Yeah, Arizona could still pop in there. They're only 3 points.
But Arizona's in the Pacific. They wouldn't be.
I thought we were talking about the Pacific.
No, we're talking Central.
Central. Sorry, that's right. But Winnipeg.
The Pacific. Switching to the Pacific. Vegas is at 80 points. They're leading the division, but they got bad.
You're right about the Central. You are.
Yeah, they got bad news over the weekend. Mark Stone is out week to week I didn't hear what type of injury it was.
I never heard. I don't know.
Yeah, they said it's not. It doesn't have to be surgically repaired, so it's probably a pulled or a partial tear of a muscle. But they're probably hoping that he gets back for the playoffs. But
Right.
Playoffs are not guaranteed right now. They're at 80 points. Edmonton is at 76 points. Calgary, with the win over Florida, moves up to 75 points. And then you have Vancouver at 74. And I'll tell you that the loss of Markstrom has really hurt them because Demko was not good early on against Toronto. And I don't know if Demko or Louis Domingue played in the game against, I'll check right now, but they played Columbus yesterday and lost 5-3. And I believe it was Domingue, but I'm looking it up right now.
Okay.
Game summary. I'm sure people love watching this, but
very exciting.
No, it was Domingue. So they had to, in back-to-backs, they had to play Domingue, and they were leading in that game and lost late. And Columbus is in the playoff race, so that was a big win for them. But right now, Arizona's still in it. They got Kemper back. He played against Buffalo. He played pretty well. But right now, Arizona is 67 games at 72 points. They're tied with Nashville, but they've played 3 more games. And that's a big chunk.
It is. I've got a bigger story, though.
Go ahead.
So now it looks like the Arizona Republic or azcentral.com now says that the Coyotes are launching a new learn-to-play hockey development program for adults. And so they got a reporter and they taught him how to play hockey.
Is his name George Plimpton?
But, the obvious crack on that is maybe focus on the big club because right now you're out of the playoffs. I mean, when's the last time Arizona made it?
2014 when they got to the conference final.
So it's been a little while. Maybe don't worry about training adults right now to playing hockey. Maybe work on the guys you have.
Yeah. Now
it's $250. Here's what you get. For $250, you get a Coyotes branded Hydro Flask growler. What is that?
A growler is what you put. It's like a bigger bottle that you put beer in. At least that's what they call it around.
Oh, yeah, it's a beer thing. Okay. And 2 tickets to a future Coyotes game.
Yeah. Okay.
Are those games? Are those meaningful games or not?
I can't remember the exact price, but every time they flash at the KeyBank Center, a family 4-pack of 4 tickets. I think it's $200. 4 tickets, 4 bags of popcorn, 4 hot dogs, and 4 small pops. And it's $200. And I don't know anybody right now in their right mind who has taken that deal.
But just think about it. You could learn how to play hockey, and then you get 2 tickets to a game for $250. You can't even go to Toronto and get 2 tickets for $250.
Yeah, no, you couldn't get a ticket for, well, if it's a playoff game, you couldn't get a ticket for $200.
No, but we're talking like a good regular season game.
Yeah.
But here, I can learn to play hockey, and they're going to throw me a couple game tickets.
If you're lucky, you get a pair of purples right up against in the last row, right against the wall for $200 American. But
yeah, and here you get, I don't know who's trained you to be a hockey player, but maybe it's Bissonnette. I don't know who it is.
No, he's training you to drink Pink Whitney's.
Oh, is that what he does?
Yeah, say that wonderful commercial.
That's right. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, Phil Kessel hot dog tax. Funky Cold Zadina says. Well, Phil is not exactly played very well in.
We've talked about that. He's had a bad year.
But okay, just to finish off the Pacific here.
Yeah.
So Vancouver, I mean, they're hurting with the loss of Besser. They're hurting with the loss of Markstrom.
Yeah.
And they've got 3 teams 2 points behind them, and 1 team in Minnesota still 3 points behind them, same number of games. The Vancouver does have the advantage of having 2 games in hand of both the Jets and Arizona. So, this is still a race in the West, and it's going to be pretty interesting. Now, Flamester, we'll take some questions here in the chat. Flamester asked why.
By the way, I just want to say while I was on vacation, I did not miss these questions. All right, go ahead.
Great. That's really ingratiating yourself to our fan base there, Rob.
I'm just being honest.
Flamester asks, why is Cam Talbot the backup in Calgary? Well,
we don't know. We've been asking that question for the whole season.
Now, they were playing. Rittich had the most games played. Now, I haven't seen the stats recently, but Rittich had the most games played of any goaltender about a month ago.
Yeah. There's two different coaches now opting to do this. You know what I mean?
Talbot was not playing. Talbot was not playing well at that point.
You mean during the Peters era?
Right, during the Peters era, and even immediately after. But I'm just checking to see what Talbot's stats are right now, and if they're significantly better than Rittich's. But I know that they've been using Talbot more recently. Let's see here. Cam Talbot. Here we go. Talbot right now, 24 games played, 2.70 goals against, 919 save percentage. That's very good. Rittich, 47 games played, 2.94 and 907 save percentage. So maybe, Talbot was not playing well early in the year. If he's playing better, they're in a tight race. They may use Talbot a lot more. Maybe it's a one.
They haven't yet.
They haven't yet, but you can't argue with the statistics. I don't know. Flamester says 2 shutouts in the last 3 games. Well, he's hot right now. So yeah. Let's see. And Talbot is better at fighting. Ha ha ha. Yes. That
Not
was
really, but okay.
Esmir says when Kessel retires, he can always compete in the Nathan's hot dog eating contest in Brooklyn. Yeah,
but he'll be the only guy with 400 goals that's doing that. So he does have that. And a Stanley Cup win. So
yeah, 2 Stanley. 2. Kyle asks, has anybody heard news on Grubauer? Absolutely.
No, I haven't heard anything.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything.
But they're hanging in it. They're gonna.
Yeah, I think if they get him back by the last week of March, they'll be happy to get 3 or 4 games in before the end of the season.
Yep.
Get them ready for the playoffs. Somebody says a growler is a mini keg. It's not really, because growlers are usually made of glass and a keg is made of metal. So
right, so they're giving me that. They're teaching me how to play in hockey, and they're giving me a couple tickets. That's a deal, man.
Yeah. Funky, your favorite, Funky Cold Zadina asks, what is up with the Pens? Well, I think what's up with the Pens is really they have nothing to play for right now. They're going to make the playoffs.
I think they're going through the doldrums of a season. They've added some guys. They're going to have to find their way on that team. Don't worry, they'll get hot.
Yeah. Couple more questions and we'll end the show here.
Not worried. I guess he's not worried about the Red Wings anymore.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I buried one of the leads. The announcement that occurred after you went to Florida regarding them playing all the games at Nassau Coliseum for the playoffs and for next year.
We knew this was coming, though. This was not a surprise. The minute that Belmont was being built, but was really going to start being constructed, and apparently now you could start to see the actual shape of the new rink. Once that was happening, you knew the NHL was going to do this because A, Barclays didn't keep up with the piping under the ice, and B, it's a lousy hockey rink. It's horrible.
I said the object that was the most sad about the news that they weren't going to play at Barclays anymore was the Honda truck.
Yes. No, and I agree with that, but still get online early for the bathroom at Nassau Coliseum. But anyhow, it's still a great arena, and I'm glad that they're getting all the games. Does it smell like urine still? No. It's not like that. It's just they just don't have the and the cause of that Joe Morello is not in the chat, so I feel free to say this. The cause of that is that the Islanders fan don't realize that you have to pee in the toilet. No, but look, Joe Morello is going to listen to this and he'll bitch about it later or next game. We also one of my favorite guys in hockey, Butch Goring, got his number retired. Yes, they just did that the other night. I heard his recap of it today on the midday show. Good for Butch. He's a great guy. He really, like, at the job he does, I think he's one of the best out there. I really do think he's very
entertaining.
He's entertaining, but he's also pretty insightful, and that's good. I want to say, coming from the area of not being insightful, is Mike Milbury when he was saying that Jake Voracek is the best flyer and not Sean Couturier. I don't know where Mike's coming from with that, but then again, Mike was in charge of the Islanders and an arena football team at the same time.
He's basing it on his salary, apparently, because he makes twice as much as Couturier. But I don't think Couturier is
talking, Mike, even if he's saying stuff that's completely erroneous.
Now, Flyer Fan 16, this will be the final question. He asks.
Oh, we got time. If there's more questions, ask them.
Right, if there's more questions, yeah, but I haven't seen that.
No, but don't cut them off, Mike. I mean,
I'm not cutting them off.
It's the final question, but what if there are 4 more popped in?
Okay. Flyer Fan 16 asks, since the Flyers are only predicted to be so-so, does Alain Vigneault get some Jack Adams consideration?
He's going to get consideration, but again, there's still Torts. Their team is still in it. There's other guys in this besides Vigneault. Vigneault has been doing a great job all year. There's no question, but this is going to be a tight field, and Vigneault could still get squeezed out. We'll see.
Okay, Matthew Gaffney says he has a question, and I'm eagerly awaiting it.
Oh, is he going to send it by telegram?
By carrier pigeon? Cameron Young asks, if Arizona misses the playoffs, how do you think Taylor Hall will feel? Well, he'll feel great as he's leaving Arizona.
I think he'll feel sad.
Well,
is that not insightful? Okay.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Russ.
Leaving Arizona. That was.
You go check his mood ring to see how he feels.
That was a movie. Look, I think he'll look at it and say he took a shot. He left New Jersey, who had zero chance of making the playoffs, and at least went to a place that was perceived as a playoff team. They were in first place for a while, and now they've hit the skids because of the goaltending. It's still too early if they're going to miss, but yeah, I don't think it's going to hurt him like he's going to even think about it over the summer. No, because he's going to think about his new fat contract.
Yeah, he's going to go wherever he wants to go, and I'd be shocked if he actually wants to stay in Arizona. It's not a slam on the Coyotes. I just
don't think he's going to want to take all suitors and then see. Yeah.
I do wonder though about Chaika and his future with not only them missing the playoffs after they trade prospects and a first round draft pick.
Now, they have to make the playoffs this year. I really feel that.
Right, but also on top of that,
not being talked about. Maybe after the meetings we'll hear about it. That has been buried.
I know Darren Drager has mentioned a couple times, and so is Elliot Friedman, but there hasn't been any kind of revelation regarding.
Yeah, I mean, instead of telling us like where the GMs are going to play golf at the meetings, give us the answer to that one.
Okay, Matthew asks, you finally got it from that carrier pigeon. If Detroit doesn't win the lottery, who should they take in the draft? Now, remember, if they lose the lottery, they could pick as low as 4. So, if it's 2, it's Byfield. Who 3 or 4?
Well, I mean, I think it would be Byfield. I mean, that's consensus right now, but that doesn't mean that's what Yzerman would do.
Right. Remember, he took Seider at 6 when he was projected to go probably in the late teens or early 20s.
I mean, I'll tell you who I think would be a great fit there. Cole Perfetti. Now, he's not huge. He's only 5'10", but you wouldn't know it when he plays. I mean, the guy's really fast, very skilled, plays defense, super smart, might have the best hockey IQ in the draft. I think if they got him, they would be in really good shape because you can't have too many centers. You could always turn guys into wingers later, but he has that kind of mentality and is a big-time scorer. Right now, as an example, he's got 103 points in 58 games.
Yeah.
It wouldn't shock me if Yzerman took him even over Byfield. I know we're all set on who should be where. I have Perfetti 4th, but it wouldn't shock me.
Flamester asks, what do I think of Rasmus Sandin? He said Sundin, but I'm assuming he means Rasmus Sandin. And I think he's very talented. I think he's going to be a really good NHL defenseman, but he's 19 right now, and in a couple games – he has showed that he needs to work on his upper body strength.
Yeah,
he's been muscled off the pot, off of the. He's lost battles in front of the net, and I think
really early in his career.
Yeah, he should. In all honesty, he should still be with the Marlies. I think they may have called him up late just to give him a quick look, but they, with the injuries that they had to play him, and I think he's going to be good. And I don't think this is going to ruin him because he's played well at the World Juniors. He's played in he played in the OHL.
I don't think he's Morgan Riley either. I think people might get too carried away with that.
Yeah,
I think he's probably like a 40, 45 point defenseman who plays good enough defense and very good skater, gets the puck out. So a second pairing guy.
Yeah, and if they get that out of a pick in the late 20s,
that's great.
That's great. And okay, for all the criticism of Kyle Dubas, and there's been a lot, you have to give him credit for one thing. In the 2 drafts that he has been in control with the Leafs, he drafted Sandin in the low 20s, trading down. Right. And he looks like he's going to be a very good NHL defenseman, not a star, not a top pairing guy, but a very good, skilled defenseman, maybe capable of quarterbacking a power play. And without a first-round pick, which he had to trade to get rid of Patrick Marleau's contract, he drafts Nick Robertson, who is, if not at the top of OHL goal scoring, is like second or third. And he played great at the World Juniors too. So
he looked really good.
Those are 2 really good picks at the top of both drafts. So, I mean, he's got to get credit for that. All right. We will be back tomorrow with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thanks for watching. And remember, without the buzz, it's just